During a Monday morning strategy meeting in front of the executive board, key clients, and nearly 30 sales team members, I was fired by my manager. He thought I'd bow my head and walk out in shame. Instead, I opened my laptop, logged into the CRM, and clicked to display the list of contracts worth $7 million that I'd brought in, right in front of them all. My name is Savannah Cole, and at 36, I'd built my entire career at Marston & Hale Consulting, one of Austin's most prestigious strategic consulting firms. For 8 years, I'd climbed from junior analyst to senior sales director, earning every promotion through sweat, sleepless nights, and an unwavering commitment to excellence. The gleaming towers of downtown Austin had witnessed my transformation from an ambitious MBA graduate to the company's top revenue generator. The numbers spoke louder than any performance review ever could. Over the past 3 years alone, I'd secured contracts worth more than $7 million. My client portfolio read like a who's who of Texas business elite, tech startups that had gone public, oil executives who trusted no one else with their expansion strategies, and healthcare conglomerates that called me directly when they needed results. I wasn't just good at my job, I was exceptional at it. My colleagues respected me, not just for the revenue I brought in, but for how I mentored junior staff and shared credit generously. I'd built relationships that transcended mere business transactions. When clients invited me to their children's graduations or asked my opinion on matters beyond our consulting scope, I knew I'd achieved something rare in this cutthroat industry: genuine trust. But success, I'd learned, painted a target on your back. Ethan Carr had been promoted to Division Executive Director 6 months ago, a position many believed should have been mine. At 42, with his Harvard MBA prominently displayed in every bio and his family's connections opening doors throughout Texas, Ethan represented everything I'd fought against in corporate America. Where I'd earned my place through merit, he'd ascended through networks. Where I built loyalty through results, he demanded it through intimidation. From day one, Ethan made it clear that the sales division would be restructured for optimal performance. His vision of optimal, I quickly realized, meant surrounding himself with people who owed their positions to him alone. The old guard, those of us who'd built this division into the powerhouse it had become, were obstacles to be removed. The Austin business community is smaller than outsiders might think. Over bourbon-soaked happy hours at the Driscoll Hotel and weekend golf games at Barton Creek, whispers traveled fast. I'd heard rumors that Ethan had been courting our competitors, making promises about bringing fresh talent and perspectives if the right opportunities arose. The subtext was clear. He was planning to jump ship and wanted to take key accounts with him. What Ethan didn't understand was that clients didn't sign contracts with Marston & Hale because of our brand alone. They signed because of the people behind that brand. They signed because when I promised something, I delivered. They signed because I answered calls at midnight during crisis situations and flew to Houston on 2 hours' notice when deals hung in the balance. My office on the 32nd floor overlooked Lady Bird Lake, a view I'd earned through those $7 million in contracts. The wall behind my desk displayed photos from client celebrations, industry awards, and one particular image that meant more than all the rest. My team celebrating after we'd saved a client $60 million through a restructuring strategy I'd developed. As I stood at that window on a humid Thursday evening, watching the bats emerge from the Congress Avenue Bridge, I noticed Ethan's reflection in the glass. He was standing in my doorway, that practiced smile playing at his lips. "Working late again, Savannah? You know, burnout is a real concern in our industry." I turned to face him, matching his false concern with professional coolness. "Just ensuring the Morrison Industries proposal is perfect. They're expecting our recommendations Monday." "About that," he said, stepping into my office uninvited. "I'll be leading that presentation. The board wants to see more executive-level engagement with our Tier 1 clients." The Morrison Industries deal was worth $2 million. I'd cultivated that relationship for 18 months, through 3 CEOs and a hostile takeover attempt, but I simply nodded, already seeing the pattern emerging. Of course, Ethan. I'll prepare the brief for you. As he left, his expensive cologne lingering like a threat, I understood with crystal clarity what was coming. Ethan wasn't just going to push me out, he was going to try to humiliate me in the process. What he didn't know was that I'd spent 8 years learning every system, every process, every detail of how our firm operated. And most importantly, I controlled the CRM system that housed every client relationship, every contract detail, every proof of who really drove this division's success. The game was about to begin. The systematic dismantling of my position began subtly at first. In leadership meetings, Ethan would interrupt my client updates with pointed questions designed to undermine rather than clarify. "Interesting approach, Savannah," he'd say, his tone dripping with condescension. Though I wonder if a more innovative strategy might yield better results. This from a man who hadn't closed a deal himself in 5 years. My ideas, painstakingly researched and backed by data, would mysteriously appear in his presentations days later, stripped of attribution. When I'd email strategic recommendations to the team, Ethan would reply, all with revisions that gutted the substance while maintaining just enough of the framework to claim credit. The other directors noticed, their uncomfortable glances during meetings telling me everything I needed to know, but no one dared speak up. Then came the project assignments, where I'd once led our most lucrative accounts. Ethan began shifting me to what he called developmental opportunities. The Henderson Group account, a software startup with impossible demands and a budget that barely covered our hourly rates. The Peninsular Energy proposal, a company teetering on bankruptcy, seeking a miracle I couldn't provide. Each assignment was carefully chosen to be a no-win scenario. "I believe in challenging our top performers," Ethan announced during a division meeting, his smile never reaching his eyes as he looked directly at me. "Savannah has graciously agreed to take on these complex cases that will really showcase her adaptability." The trap was elegant in its simplicity. Succeed. And he'd claim he was a visionary leader who pushed his team to excellence. Fail. And he'd have documented performance issues to justify what we both knew was coming. Late one evening, I discovered something that chilled me to the bone. While updating the CRM system, I noticed unusual activity in my client files. Login timestamps showed Ethan accessing my contacts after hours, downloading communication histories, studying deal structures. He was mapping my relationships, learning who trusted me, understanding the personal connections that transcended corporate boundaries. My assistant, Maria, confided in me over coffee at 7th Flag Coffee on South Congress. "He's been asking questions," she whispered, glancing around nervously. "About your client meetings, who you talk to most frequently, which contracts are up for renewal. Yesterday, he had me pull all your travel expenses for the past 2 years. The picture crystallized. Ethan wasn't just planning to fire me, he was planning to steal my clients. The whispers I'd been hearing were true. He'd been meeting with Brennan Associates, our primary competitor, promising to bring a book of business worth millions if they'd create a position for him. I started documenting everything, every client testimonial, every contract I'd negotiated, every email thanking me for going above and beyond. The CRM system became my weapon. Meticulously updated with notes that clearly showed my role in each deal. I created detailed relationship maps that no one else could replicate, showing how personal connections had evolved into million-dollar partnerships. The Henderson Group project failed, as designed. Despite my 70-hour weeks and innovative approaches, a company hemorrhaging cash couldn't be saved by consulting alone. Ethan's email to the leadership team was swift and cutting. While we appreciate Savannah's efforts, this outcome raises concerns about judgment and client selection. The Peninsular Energy proposal went the same way. No amount of financial restructuring could save a company whose primary asset was a technology made obsolete by market changes. Another email, another public questioning of my capabilities. But while Ethan was playing chess, I was playing a different game entirely. Every client he thought he was mapping, I was solidifying. discreet lunches where I shared my concerns about the division's new direction, carefully worded emails about ensuring continuity of service regardless of internal changes, phone calls that reminded them why they'd chosen to work with me personally, not just Marston and Hale. The final warning came through Brad Williams, a fellow director who'd started with me 8 years ago. We met at the Broken Spoke, away from downtown's prying eyes. Monday's leadership meeting, he said, not meeting my eyes. Ethan's called it a strategic realignment session. He's been building a case. Savannah? Performance issues, cultural fit, failure to adapt to new leadership paradigms. HR's been briefed. I thanked Brad, finished my beer, and drove home through Austin's Friday night traffic with perfect clarity. Ethan thought he'd orchestrated my professional execution. What he didn't understand was that in his arrogance, he'd given me the perfect stage for my response. That weekend, I prepared meticulously. Every contract, every testimonial, every piece of evidence that showed who truly built and maintained our division's success. All accessible through my CRM credentials, ready to be displayed at a moment's notice. Ethan wanted a public execution. I'd give him a public revelation. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp clarity that only Texas winters can bring. I dressed deliberately, my best charcoal suit, the Hermes scarf a client had gifted me after a particularly successful merger, my grandmother's pearl earrings for courage. If this was to be my professional funeral, I'd attend it with dignity. The meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. in the Davidson conference room, our largest space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Austin skyline. As I entered, the setup told me everything. Instead of our usual round table arrangement that encouraged collaboration, Ethan had arranged the room theater style, with him at the front like a prosecutor ready to present his case. The attendance was overwhelming. The entire sales and marketing divisions filled the room, nearly 30 people who'd worked alongside me for years. The executive board occupied the front row, CEO Patricia Morse, CFO Daniel Huang, and COO Jennifer Blake, their faces carefully neutral. Most telling were the 6 figures on the wall-mounted screens joining via Zoom. Key clients including Morrison Industries, Apex Healthcare, and Lone Star Energy Group. Thank you all for joining this strategic realignment session, Ethan began, his voice carrying the false gravitas of someone who'd rehearsed this moment. As we move forward into a new era of growth, it's essential that we ensure every team member aligns with our evolved vision and performance standards. He clicked to his first slide, a graph showing the division's recent performance, carefully crafted to obscure the real story. While we've maintained reasonable numbers, certain accounts have shown concerning trends, failed initiatives, lost opportunities, relationships that haven't yielded expected returns. My name wasn't on the slide, but it didn't need to be. Everyone knew where this was heading. Leadership requires difficult decisions, Ethan continued, his eyes finding mine across the room. When senior team members can't adapt to new methodologies, when they cling to outdated approaches, when their recent performance raises questions about their continued fit. He paused for effect, and I saw several clients on screen lean forward, confusion evident on their faces. Margaret Morrison, CEO of Morrison Industries, actually unmuted herself. Ethan, I'm sorry, but why were we asked to join an internal HR discussion? Transparency, Margaret, Ethan smiled. You deserve to know about changes that might affect your account management, which brings me to today's primary agenda item. He clicked to the next slide. There it was, my name, my photo, and a series of bullet points outlining my performance deficiencies. The Henderson Group failure, the Peninsular energy loss, missed targets that were never mine to begin with, creative interpretations of client feedback taken out of context. Effective immediately, Ethan announced, his voice carrying a satisfaction he couldn't quite hide. Savannah Cole will be transitioning out of her role as Senior Sales Director. We believe this change will allow us to bring fresh perspectives and innovative approaches to your accounts. The room was silent. 30 colleagues who'd celebrated wins with me, who'd watched me build this division client by client, sat frozen. On screen, our clients looked stunned. This wasn't just unprofessional, It was corporate theater at its worst. Jennifer Blake spoke first. Ethan, this seems highly irregular. Personnel decisions aren't typically. I believe in radical transparency. Ethan interrupted. Our clients and team deserve to understand the standards we maintain. Savannah, I assume you'll want to collect your personal items. Security can assist. Actually, I said, standing slowly, my voice cutting through his grandstanding with surgical precision. Since you've chosen this forum for this discussion, I believe some additional transparency might be valuable. I walked to the front of the room, my heels clicking against the marble floor with metronomic certainty. My laptop bag hung from my shoulder, and I could feel every eye tracking my movement. You're absolutely right, Ethan, I continued, setting my laptop on the podium he'd vacated in surprise. Our clients and colleagues deserve complete transparency about performance standards and who truly drives success in this division. His face began to change, the satisfaction morphing into uncertainty as I opened my laptop and connected it to the presentation system with practiced ease. Since we're all here, including our valued clients who've taken time from their busy schedules, perhaps they'd like to see some actual data about account management and revenue generation. Savannah, this isn't. Ethan started, but Margaret Morrison's voice cut through from the screen. No, Ethan, I'd very much like to see what Savannah has to share, especially since you're suggesting changes to our account management without prior consultation. I smiled, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Thank you, Margaret. I think everyone here will find this quite illuminating. The CRM login screen appeared on the conference room displays. In that moment, watching Ethan's face drain of color as he realized what was about to happen, I felt a calm settle over me. He'd wanted a public execution. He was about to get one. My fingers moved across the keyboard with deliberate precision as the CRM dashboard materialized on screen. The familiar interface had never looked more powerful. Each data point, a bullet in the chamber of truth I was about to fire. Let me share some interesting metrics, I said, clicking through to the Revenue Analytics panel. This is our division's client portfolio, sorted by lifetime value and account ownership. The first screen showed a pie chart that made several board members lean forward. My name dominated 73% of the visualization, attached to contracts totaling $7.2 million over the past 3 years. Ethan's slice was barely visible, a sliver representing 2 inherited accounts worth less than $400,000 combined. Now, let's look at client acquisition, I continued, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. Every major account signed since 2022, including the relationships that define our market position, click. Morrison Industries, initial contact, Savannah Cole. Relationship manager, Savannah Cole. Contract value, $1.8 million. Click. Apex Healthcare, introduced through Savannah Cole's network. Negotiated by Savannah Cole. 3-year contract worth $2.1 million. Click. Lone Star Energy Group. Cold approach by Savannah Cole. 17 meetings over 8 months. Contract value, $1.4 million. On the Zoom screens, I watched recognition dawn on our clients' faces. Several were unmuting, their voices overlapping in confusion and growing anger. Ethan, you told us you were restructuring the team that built these relationships, Thomas Chen from Apex Healthcare said, his voice sharp with accusation. You never mentioned you were removing the person who is the relationship. I clicked to the next screen, communication logs showing the thousands of emails, calls, and meetings that had built these partnerships. But the real damage came with the project attribution report. Since Ethan mentioned performance concerns, let's examine project success rates, I said, pulling up a detailed analysis. Here's every project from the past 18 months, showing initial assignment, actual execution, and client satisfaction scores. The data was damning. Projects I'd led showed 94% client satisfaction. The few Ethan had touched directly averaged 61%. More interesting were the projects he'd claimed credit for. The system clearly showed my login credentials on every strategic document, every client presentation, every successful delivery. That Morrison Industries strategy you presented last month, Ethan? Margaret Morrison's voice crackled through the speakers, icy with rage. The one you said you'd personally developed? I'm looking at metadata showing Savannah created every slide, every financial model, every innovative recommendation. Patricia Morse, our CEO, stood slowly. Savannah, are you showing us that Ethan has been misrepresenting account ownership and project attribution? I'm showing you data, Patricia, I replied, clicking to one final screen. Including this interesting access log from the past 2 weeks, it seems someone has been downloading my entire client contact list, including personal cell numbers and communication histories. The timestamps are illuminating. The logs showed Ethan's after-hours access, systematically copying years of relationship building. But the most damaging entry was from the previous Friday: bulk exports of confidential client data to a personal email address. You were stealing my contacts, I said, turning to face Ethan directly. Planning to take them with you to Brennan Associates, weren't you? I particularly enjoyed the email you sent them last Tuesday, promising to bring significant business opportunities if they created an executive vice president position. The room erupted. Board members demanding explanations, clients threatening to pull contracts, employees looking between Ethan and me with a mixture of shock and dawning respect. You can't, Ethan stammered, his carefully constructed facade crumbling. Actually, I can, I said, closing my laptop with quiet finality. You see, Ethan, you made a fundamental mistake. You thought clients bought consulting from Marston and Hale. They don't. They buy trust, relationships, and results from people who deliver on their promises. You tried to steal something that was never about titles or territories. It was about the personal equity I've built with every late-night call, every crisis managed, every promise kept. Daniel Huang, our CFO, was already pulling out his phone. Legal needs to see this immediately. Downloading client data to personal email addresses is a termination-level breach of our confidentiality agreements. Jennifer Blake stood as well. Ethan, step outside, now. But I wasn't finished. Looking directly at the camera showing our assembled clients, I delivered my closing statement. To our valued partners watching, I apologize for this unprofessional display. You deserved better than to be props in corporate theater. Whatever happens next, know that your trust and your business have always been my highest priority. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by Ethan's retreating footsteps and the quiet murmur of shocked conversations. On screen, Margaret Morrison spoke for all of them. Savannah, we need to talk. All of us. Today. The aftermath was immediate and brutal. Ethan stood frozen in the doorway as Jennifer Blake repeated her command, her voice now sharp with executive authority. Ethan, outside. Now. But the real devastation came from the Zoom screens. Thomas Reeves from Apex Healthcare unmuted first, his face flushed with anger. Patricia, what the hell is going on over there? We signed with Marston and Hale because of Savannah's strategic vision. If she's being forced out, we need to discuss our contract's termination clause immediately. Thomas, please. Patricia began, but Margaret Morrison cut her off. No, Patricia. We deserve answers. Ethan scheduled this call saying there would be important structural changes affecting our accounts. He failed to mention he was firing the only person at your firm who actually understands our business. On screen after screen, clients were unmuting, their voices creating a cacophony of outrage and disbelief. The Lone Star Energy Group's CEO, Robert Kimball, was perhaps the most direct. Savannah saved us $12 million last year with her restructuring plan. Ethan couldn't even remember our core business model during our last meeting. This is unacceptable. In the conference room, the employee exodus began. Sarah Martinez, a senior account manager who'd worked with me for 5 years, stood first. She gathered her laptop and phone, then walked directly to where I stood. I'm done, she announced to the room. I won't work for someone who steals credit and destroys the people who built this division. She looked at me. Savannah, whatever you do next, I want in. Her declaration triggered an avalanche. One by one, team members stood and left their seats. David Park, Michael Torres, Jennifer Wu, account managers and analysts who understood that their success was intrinsically tied to the relationships I'd cultivated. Within minutes, half the sales division had effectively declared their allegiance. Patricia Morse finally regained control of the room, though her composed executive demeanor showed visible cracks. Everyone, please, let's what? Interrupted James Griffin from Morrison Industries. Pretend we didn't just watch a coup attempt fail spectacularly? Patricia, your EVP just admitted to stealing proprietary data. He tried to publicly humiliate the person responsible for millions in revenue. What exactly should we be calm about? Daniel Huang had his legal team on speaker now, their voices adding to the chaos. Mr. Carr's actions constitute multiple violations of his employment agreement. We need to secure all company devices immediately. Through it all, Ethan remained in the doorway, his face cycling through emotions, shock, rage, disbelief, and finally, desperate calculation. He tried one last gambit. This is all a misunderstanding, he said, attempting to reclaim his authority. Savannah has clearly manipulated this data. As EVP, I demand— You demand nothing. Jennifer Blake cut him off. Security is already on their way up. You'll surrender your laptop, phone, and access badges immediately. The clients weren't finished. Robert Kimball's voice boomed through the speakers. Patricia, I need a guarantee right now. If Savannah isn't retained with full authority over our account, Lone Star Energy walks. That's $1.4 million annually you'll lose by end of business today. Same for Apex Healthcare, Thomas Reeves added. Our contract has a key person clause. Savannah is that key person. Margaret Morrison delivered the killing blow. Morrison Industries will be reviewing all options. But I can tell you this. We won't work with any firm that treats its top performers this way. And Ethan, if you think any of us will follow you to Brennan Associates after this display, you're even more delusional than this stunt suggests. The revelation that clients knew about his plans to jump ship was the final nail. Patricia's face went from concerned to furious in an instant. You were planning to leave and take our clients? Security arrived then. 2 uniformed guards who clearly had been briefed on the situation. They flanked Ethan, who looked around the room like a trapped animal seeking escape. Your laptop and phone, Mr. Carr, one guard said firmly. As Ethan was escorted out, his carefully constructed world collapsing with each step, he turned back to look at me. In his eyes, I saw the recognition of complete defeat. He'd orchestrated this public forum to destroy me. Instead, he'd provided the perfect stage for his own downfall. The conference room screens showed our clients in animated discussion among themselves. Patricia approached me, her expression a mixture of embarrassment and desperate calculation. Savannah, obviously we need to discuss. I held up my hand, stopping her mid-sentence. The power dynamic had shifted completely, and everyone in the room knew it. Patricia, I think our clients have made their position clear. But there's more to discuss, including my future with Marston and Hale. I looked directly at the screens, at the clients who'd become partners and advocates. Shall we schedule that call for this afternoon? I believe we all have much to consider. The murmurs of agreement from the screens were unanimous. As I gathered my laptop, I noticed the remaining employees watching me with something approaching awe. In 15 minutes, I dismantled Ethan's carefully planned coup and demonstrated exactly who held the real power in this division. But I wasn't done yet. I stood at the podium, my laptop closed, but my presence still commanding the room. The security guards had disappeared with Ethan, but the gen waves of his removal continued to ripple through the conference room. Patricia Morse stood near the front, her CEO composure cracking as she processed the mass client revolt she'd just witnessed. Before we schedule that call, I said, my voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone who held all the cards. There's something else everyone should know. I pulled out my phone, swiping to an email I'd received 3 weeks earlier. Bennett's strategy group reached out to me last month. They're offering an executive vice president position with a compensation package that's 60% above my current salary. They specifically mentioned their interest in expanding their presence in the Texas energy and healthcare sectors. The implications hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Every client on screen understood what I was really saying. Their accounts could follow me out the door. "You've been in discussions with Bennett?" Patricia's voice cracked slightly. "I've been exploring my options," I replied evenly, especially after it became clear that my contributions here were being systematically undermined. But I wanted to give Marston and Hale the opportunity to recognize and correct the situation. Sarah Martinez, who'd declared her loyalty earlier, stepped forward. "For the record, Savannah isn't the only one Bennett has approached. They've been quietly recruiting from our division for months. They know where the real talent is." On the screens, our clients were having their own sidebar conversations, no longer muting themselves. I caught fragments. "Follow her wherever." "Contract portability." "Time to reassess our partnerships." Patricia tried to regain control. "Savannah, surely we can discuss this privately." "No." Margaret Morrison's voice cut through sharply. "We're past private discussions. Patricia, do you understand what's at stake here? This isn't about one employee. This is about $7 million in contracts that exist because of personal relationships. Relationships your EVP just tried to destroy." I raised my hand slightly, commanding attention. "I have a proposal. But first, I need to be very clear about something." I looked directly at each screen, then swept my gaze across the employees still in the room. "The clients I've served aren't just account numbers. Robert, you trusted me with Lone Star's restructuring when 3 other firms said it couldn't be done. Margaret, I was on the phone with your team at midnight during the Morrison acquisition, walking through scenarios. Thomas, when Apex needed emergency strategic pivoting during COVID, we built that survival plan together over 72 straight hours." Each client nodded, remembering those moments that transcended typical consultant-client relationships. These partnerships were built on trust, availability, and proven results. They're not corporate assets to be reassigned. They're professional relationships that I've earned through years of consistent delivery. Daniel Huang, the CFO, had been furiously texting throughout this exchange. He looked up, his face grave. "Legal confirms that Ethan's data theft constitutes gross misconduct. His termination is immediate. And we're pursuing potential criminal charges for corporate espionage." "That's a start," I said. "But it doesn't address the systemic issue. How many other top performers have been driven out by toxic leadership? How many relationships have been damaged by executives who value politics over performance?" Jennifer Blake, who'd maintained executive solidarity until now, finally broke ranks. "She's right. The board needs to hear this. We've lost 3 senior directors in the past year, all from divisions where new leadership prioritized consolidation of power over actual results." The employee contingent in the room had grown bolder. Michael Torres spoke up. "Savannah's not just talking about herself. We've all watched good people get pushed out by executives who felt threatened by their success." On screen, Robert Kimball unmuted again. "Here's my position. Patricia. Lone Star Energy will maintain its contract with Marston and Hale under one condition. Savannah Cole is promoted to executive vice president with full autonomy over her accounts and team. Non-negotiable." Apex Healthcare seconds that. Thomas Reeves added immediately. "Morrison Industries concurs." Margaret Morrison stated flatly. "In fact, we'll go further. We want Savannah to have a seat on your leadership committee. The person managing $7 million in revenue should have a voice in strategic decisions." The dominoes fell quickly. Every client on the call endorsed the demand. In the conference room, the remaining sales team began applauding, a slow clap that built to thunderous approval. Patricia looked at me, and I saw the moment she understood. This wasn't a negotiation anymore. It was terms of surrender. "I'll need to consult with the board," she began. "You have until 5 p.m. today," I interrupted, standing and collecting my laptop. "Bennett's strategy group is expecting my answer by end of business tomorrow." "And Patricia?" "Whatever the board decides, know this. I will never again allow my worth to be diminished by someone who contributes nothing but takes credit for everything. I walked toward the door, then paused, turning back to the room one final time. For those who stood up today, who chose integrity over safety, thank you. Whatever happens next, you've shown what real leadership looks like. As I reached the doorway, Margaret Morrison's voice followed me. Savannah, that 5 p.m. deadline, we'll be calling Patricia every hour until she confirms you've been promoted. Count on it. I smiled, nodded to the room, and walked out with my head high, leaving behind a conference room in complete upheaval and a CEO facing the ultimate corporate checkmate. The call came at 3:47 p.m., barely an hour before my deadline. Patricia's voice carried the weight of a CEO who'd spent the day in emergency board meetings and damage control. Savannah, the board has reached a unanimous decision. We're prepared to offer you the position of Executive Vice President of Strategic Accounts, reporting directly to me. Your compensation package will reflect the value you bring, a 70% increase from your current salary, plus performance bonuses tied to client retention. I sat in my home office, looking out at the Austin skyline, and let her sweat through the silence. Additionally, she continued, you'll have full autonomy over your team, including hiring decisions. The board has also approved your seat on the leadership committee. We recognize that your voice has been undervalued. And Ethan? I asked. Terminated for cause. Legal is pursuing charges for data theft and corporate espionage. His access has been revoked. And we're conducting a full audit of any information he may have compromised. He won't be working in Austin again. I'll make sure of that. The vindication was sweet, but I wasn't done. I want Sarah Martinez promoted to senior director, with Michael Torres and Jennifer Wu as her direct reports. They showed courage today. That should be rewarded. Done. Patricia agreed immediately. Anything else? A written guarantee that my client relationships remain under my sole management, no interference, no forced transitions, no politics. You'll have it by morning. I ended the call and immediately received a flood of texts. The clients had been true to their word. They'd called Patricia hourly, with increasing threats of contract termination. Margaret Morrison's message made me laugh. Told you we had your back. Welcome to the executive suite, Savannah. You've earned it. The next morning, I walked into Marston & Hale as Executive Vice President Savannah Cole. The security guard who'd escorted Ethan out gave me a knowing nod. The elevator ride to the 40th floor, the executive level, felt like vindication. My new office was 3 times the size of my old one, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Texas Capitol. On my desk sat welcome gifts from clients, flowers from my team, and a handwritten note from Jennifer Blake. Should have happened years ago. Glad you stayed. Within a week, the ripple effects became clear. 3 of Ethan's allied directors quietly resigned, reading the writing on the wall. The toxic culture he'd tried to cultivate withered without his presence. In its place, a renewed focus on merit, results, and genuine leadership began to flourish. Bennett's strategy group graciously accepted my declination, with their CEO noting, "If Marston & Hale is smart enough to finally value you properly, we respect that. The offer stands if things change." 6 months later, our division posted record numbers. The $7 million in contracts I'd protected grew to $12 million as clients. Impressed by Marston & Hale's response to the crisis, expanded their engagements. Sarah Martinez landed 2 major new accounts. The team that had stood up in that conference room became the core of a reinvigorated sales force. Ethan Carr's name became a cautionary tale in Austin business circles. Blacklisted from major firms, unable to leverage the relationships he'd tried to steal, he eventually left Texas entirely. The last I heard, he was working for a small firm in Delaware, his dreams of executive glory as dead as his reputation. But the real victory wasn't his downfall. It was the message sent throughout corporate America. When you build genuine relationships, when you deliver consistent value, when you earn trust through actions rather than politics, you become irreplaceable. No title, no organizational chart, No ambitious executive can take that away. I learned that power isn't given by positions or granted by superiors. It's earned through every late-night call answered, every crisis managed, every promise kept. And when someone tries to steal what you've built, sometimes the best revenge isn't elaborate planning or subtle maneuvering. Sometimes it's as simple as opening your laptop and letting the truth speak for itself. As I stood in my executive office 1 year later, watching the sun set over Austin, I thought about everyone who'd ever been pushed aside by corporate politics. Everyone who'd watched their contributions stolen by those who confused authority with accomplishment. My phone buzzed with a text from a young account manager who'd just joined our team. "Thank you for showing us that integrity wins." I smiled, remembering that conference room, that moment when everything changed. Ethan had wanted to destroy me publicly. Instead, he'd given me the platform to prove a simple truth. You can't steal relationships. You can't reassign trust. And you can never underestimate someone who knows their worth and isn't afraid to prove it. In the end, I didn't need revenge. I just needed to show everyone what they already knew, but had been too afraid to acknowledge. The numbers never lie. And neither did the $7 million that walked with me wherever I went. Thank you for listening to my story. I'm curious, where are you listening from? Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your own thoughts about workplace dynamics and standing up for your worth. Have you ever faced a similar situation? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments.